Let's continue with our discussion on GSTR1, the statement of outward supply. We are checking out third category of details that are required in this return, the details related to supply to consumer. The first two were basic, and the details of invoice, credit or debit note, that was at transaction level. This detail related to supply is at an overall level. So this is the same information aggregated on an overall level rather than a transaction level. You'll have to give the HSN and SAC code for each of these codes, the place of supply, the aggregate taxable value, the rate and amount of tax, IGST, CGST and SGST. So it's kind of like an added aggregate value of the information given earlier, the invoice level information. Remember, all of these would also include amendment to any of the information given in earlier tax returns. That's the third category. Moving on to the fourth one, details of different types of supply. There are three types of supply that the return asks you to specifically call out. Those under reverse charge, exports, and supplies which are exempt, nil, or do not attract GST at all. Let's take up the first one, reverse charge. While we talked about the details at invoice level, we've seen that all of those details will have to be split for normal supplies and reverse charge supplies. So that's one of the details captured for reverse charge. The second specific detail that you need to include in GST is that of inward supplies which are received from unregistered person on which you're liable to pay reverse charge. That's an inward supply detail that you'll have to include here. That's all under reverse charge. Coming to exports, there are certain information, invoice details, normal ones, number, date, transaction value, HSN code or SAC code as the case may be. You will also have to give out the shipping bill or bill of export details, nothing but the bill number and the date of the document. You'll have to give out the tax rate and amount, IGST, CGST or SGST. Again, there's a split in this information. You will have to split it for exports with tax and without payment of tax. If you've exported goods with payment of tax and intend to claim a refund on that export, on that tax amount, then you include that in one portion. If you have exported goods without paying any tax, you put that in an other portion. It has to be split. This is for the government to identify how much of refund can you actually claim. That's the information for exports. Coming to the last type of supply, exempt, nil and non-GST supplies, you'll have to split this information between B2B and B2C. B2B only means that the supply is made to registered persons. It's to another registered taxable payer. That's the B2B part, interstate as well as intrastate supply. B2C, as you can guess, the counterparty is an unregistered taxable payer. That's all that you'll have to give for this category of goods and services. Those are the three: reverse, export and exempt, nil or non-GST. Simple details. Moving on to the last category of our 5 in details required in GSTR1, others. This is a combination of all that's left out from the general 4. The first of which is for advance. If you've paid tax already in any of the previous accounting period for advances received or on account of time of supply falling in an earlier period, but you've issued the invoice only in the current period, then you'll have to give out details of such invoice in this return along with the transaction ID that had been generated when you paid the tax by the tax system. The second detail in others category relates to e-commerce portals. If you've made supplies through e-commerce portals of other companies, you'll have to give details. This detail is split between e-commerce supplies made to registered taxable persons if your final consumer through the e-commerce portal, if he's registered, or if he's unregistered. You'll have to split the information. In this category, apart from all details mentioned in transaction level of invoice or credit or debit note, only two additional information you'll have to give: the merchant ID issued to you by the e-commerce operator and the GSTIN of such operator. These are the two values that you'll have to add. The next, third information in others category is the tax liability. Now this arises when the time of supply has occurred in the tax period, but the invoice date, the last date to issue invoice, has not been reached and you've not issued an invoice. So your tax liability has occurred, but you've not issued invoice, and therefore you'll not have a invoice to fill in the details in the transaction level category. The last information that you'll have to fill in GSTR 1 is related to all other details. If you've changed any of the details of earlier returns, then you'll have to reflect it in this period, the period that you've changed the details. Put it in GSTR 1 and inform the government that you've made so and so changes from what you've informed the government in earlier returns. Those were the 5 things that GSTR 1 broadly asks you for. In the next video, we'll check out details of GSTR 2, which is filed by the recipient. Statement of inward supplies.